Namaskar Trailblazers. I'm with a new episode where we are going to do complete hands-on on enabling our MCP server, exposing the data outside Salesforce to a client and see how exactly we can integrate the client to our Salesforce via external client app and pull the records to client and do some data manipulations. Right, so let's get started and then we'll directly jump into our hands-on. As I told in the previous episode, I highly recommend you to actually create a new developer edition sign up so that we can get started from the basics and all the features are available for us to enable it, right? So first thing is first, let's talk about the MCP settings that we have in our Salesforce that is out of box, that is available. It's like in the previous episode we spoke about MCP, this particular page, very brief, but what we did not do is we did not deep dive into one of the MCP server to see what all things that we have, right? So let's dig deep on what exactly each MCP server contains and what all the tools and prompts that are available for us to do the job, right? So as you can see that MCP server has some details that is present and API name is a must. We have that API name with some description at a header level, and then the server URL we have, which is very important for us to connect our client to Salesforce, which we will be using in a minute, right? And then each MCP server will come with tool and the prompts. The tool is something that is letting the client know that what all the capability that this server contains, which can be a kind of information or the index information to the client so that it knows what all operation this MCP server can do based on the ask that the client is doing. And I mean at the client the user is asking, the tool, the LLM will kind of decide which all the MCP servers that I have. Let's say we have SObject and we have other MCP server, and the user is asking for, I want to pull all the account details that is created in this particular financial year. Then LLM will try to understand, okay, like what all the tools available for me, right? Then we will be having SObject all and there are other MCP servers. Then this SObject all has multiple tools available. This is the kind of action items that it can perform. Then it understands, okay, in this MCP server I can actually have a tool called query records. This particular one is suitable for what the user is asking for. Let me use this particular tool, right? Then LLM will give that to the agent and agent will kind of perform the call out to MCP server for a subject all, saying that I need to use this tool of your server that is available. So fetch me the records and give me the results. So right, that is what will happen in the backend. So now let's dig deep on this particular one tool available so that we understand a bit more like what exactly is happening behind the scenes, right? You can see that context is very important for us because now it's LLM that is actually talking to the API. Like LLM is the one who is making the API callouts in a indirect fashion where the agents are there. So the context is very important for each agents, right? So that's why you can see the description of the particular tool, what it can actually do is very descriptive manner. And you can see that this can actually know like objects as object fields that you need to, right? It's primarily the way to read the data in Salesforce. That is like we are giving context, like why do we need this particular socle, and we are trying to give them the syntax, like how exactly it can actually query, where the fields and the object is kind of the replacement that will happen on the go, right? And then we are telling that you need to provide some limit because you can't keep fetching all the records, right? That is not a efficient way of doing it. So that's why you can see that we are also talking about like how we can do the parent to parent hierarchy relationship query. We are giving an example for that. And also we are trying to tell them that it can actually do a nested query. So for account you can even try to query the list of opportunities related contacts also in a fashion that is being given, right? So it is saying that you should always use where clause and the limit so that you can limit the number of records that are being pulled, so it is efficient way, right? So that is what it is trying to say. And then there are like we have timeout limits, like it will happen timeout, and then the 50,000 is the maximum circle, as we know that is the limit for any given query that can happen. So it is just letting them know that this is the limit that it can have and the justification why you should have limit for, right? But You see the schema here, that is where the interesting part comes. So the type is object, like you're doing a SQL query, then obviously you're trying to fetch the records of an object. So that's why the type is object, and the property is having one property called as queue, right? You don't have any other property here. There's only one property called queue, and the property is a queue is nothing but a query parameter for us, right? So it is letting the agent or the LLM know that if you're trying to use this particular tool, then please send me the request in this format so that I can understand, right? So this queue is a parameter, but what the queue property holds, right? So that is present here, that the type is string, that you can send this particular query queue parameter in a string format, and then there is a description that it is saying that it's a query parameter, and it's the metadata, right? So it is the API name that has been given. So now at the end of this particular request, when client reads it, MCP server, and then it understands this is the tool that it can use, and this is the property that this particular tool has, then it will build the SOQL query based on this structure, and then we will get the query sent across to the Salesforce so that Salesforce can give the details. So this is how this MCP servers are working in the backend, where you have this, right? And as you can see, there are certain idempotency and the labels that are being given, right? So now it is read only, it is open world, and it is idempotent. That means each record has individuality, and there is a primary key, external key, it can differ, right? But as you can scroll down, there are destructive way of doing it. So updating record means you are doing some operation on that, right? You are doing a DML on existing record. That means you should be cautious. So that's why you can see there are other details that are being given, like other context that has been shared across for this particular one. But you can see the delete record is also there, like it is also destructive. So it's kind of a labeling to the agent who is trying to reach out to this particular tool. Hey, this is destructive one, so please be cautious when you're trying to do, right? And then based on the conversation that you're having at the client level, so make sure that you have the necessity approvals at your end as a client, right? So that is what it is trying to do. Now coming to the prompts, you can see there are two prompts that has been given out of the box for this particular MCP server. That means there is a prompt builder that has been built where you can ask for executive briefing for account review meeting, right? So it's a account review if you want to do, then what all things that this particular MCP server can do for you. So let us open that, right? So let's try to understand. Now if you can see, it's just giving a context again, like you're a business analyst, but this happens in Einstein, right? So this is happening inside the Salesforce. But what MCP server can do, it can actually connect that particular features and the other capabilities as a MCP server, right? So that is what we are trying to do here. So it is exposed as a MCP server where you can give this kind of prompt, and this particular Einstein will kind of read that particular records, and it will try to say if there is no account found, then it will be directly sent across, or if there are any accounts, then probably it will try to fetch the opportunity, contacts, case, and then try to build the response in a more readable format, and then send across that particular response back to the agent who is requesting for. So if there is another kind of similar prompt that is present, right? So this is all about one MCP server, right? Now what we need to do, we just need to activate it. So we understood that MCP server contains tools and prompts that is out of the box. We will eventually cover how we can create our own custom MCP servers. That will also we will be covering in upcoming weeks. Stay tuned for that. But for now, we are just trying to understand how we can connect our client to Salesforce, right? That is what we are trying to do. So now let's go ahead and activate this particular one. Now it is activated. So that is all you need to do in order to activate your MCP server. But you need to connect this particular Salesforce to external. Then what do? We have to create external client app. If you have not followed my external client app series, then highly recommend you to actually go and watch it so that you kind of understands bit more on that particular external client app if you are very new to external client app, or in general if you want to just understand what is the difference between connected app and the external client app, probably that would be the best place to start, I would recommend, right? So for now, since we have to connect our Salesforce to Claude, we would actually try to create another external client app for us here, right? So let's try to name it as Headless360 external client app, right? So that is what we were trying to do. Let's give some email ID, because this is the email ID that will be actually helping Salesforce to communicate any information that is needed for this particular app. right? So we have spoken about this in depth in our external client app series. But yeah, so now I have enabled this OAuth. I would be sharing this particular document which will be talking about how to do the setup of that particular external client app, right? So if I go to this external client app, we can see that the callback URL differs for each of the client that you are expecting to use, right? This is where we will be talking about why it is not only Claude, right? So you can see that you can try to do Postman, Cursor, Chat GPT, right? But the problem that we have in this other Gemini even, right? The problem that we have is you may have to create your own Node.js server or any server that is there. You have to append that so that whenever agent actually tries to call, it can actually reach out to this particular platforms. It cannot be done automatically. But Anthropic, as they have the MCP server natively built at their end, they have the capability to reach out by themselves without any server that you have to create. So that is advantage, and that is the reason why most of the demos that we are seeing is with Claude only, because it's readily available, right? But what you can do, you can actually try to create your own Node.js server, which will in the backend try to reach out to the Salesforce based on the request that Gemini is actually getting, right? So that also you can try to do. But since we need to just understand what or how we can connect, let's use the Claude only here, right? And then let's come back here and then let's try to give this particular or like callback URL that is very important for us, right? So now let's try to give some of the auth scopes that we need, right? So that is very important for us. Now, the new auth scope that has been introduced by Salesforce is this particular MCP API. That means if you are trying to use this external client app to connect to any client and you're trying to use that MCP server that we spoke about, right? If you want to use the server URL, then you would need to actually give this particular auth scope so that Salesforce understands that it is trying to reach out to the MCP server, or else it would not, right? So now let's try to give some other access. This again depends on case to case basis and for your project basis, but I'm just trying to give the basic needs that I think that is needed, right? Which we will be using. So let's give API access and let's give web access also, right? And then we need to give this particular request access token, right? So that is very much needed. But if I go to this particular um, document, you can see the auth scope that is needed for is API and the refresh token. That is the only two things that you need, and you need to enable jot bearer, right? So if you would have followed the series of external client app, I spoke about JWT, Jot, like OAuth token, right? So that particular one is already covered. So if you want, you can actually try to go and have that particular look onto that episode as well. But here we are just trying to authenticate based on that particular token, Jot token, right? But we are not going to enable any flow enablement. Like why? Because we are trying to not enable any user level access, like we will not be authenticating by default, so we will be saving this particular one without the flow enablement. But usually what we used to do, we used to actually use this policies and we used to go and make this particular one as admin approved user. Like we don't have to do that now because it will automatically detect as a web server login, right? And then based on that it will authenticate that user, and for that user, based on that user context, you would be able to pull the information. So now what is needed for us, we just need our external client app and secret that I'm going to pull that in another screen where I will be trying to get that particular detail across. So now once we get this, we will try to jump to our Claude where we will try to connect our external client app to it. So let me try to get that secret. Great. Okay, so I have it. And so now I have what all the basic necessities that I had to have. I have it everything in order to connect our Claude. I have my external client app and I have my MCP server enabled, right? So let me just go back to my MCP server so that I can just pull the server URL for us, right? So let's go here. This is the one that I have activated. Let me copy this. So this will be, since it is out of box, the server URL will be constant. There will be no change in that. Only your external client app that you will be creating, you may have to probably have that particular one handy with you, right? So now let's go to Claude. Right now you can see it is not connected to any Salesforce. there's no connector, like give me account details. So probably it would not understand it, it would try to make a generic response for us. Let's see, right? Yeah, so it is not trying to, since it doesn't have any context on that particular connected MCP server, it is trying to just make a generic statement. So let's try to go and try to set up this particular MCP server for us, right? So let's go to this particular one, and then you can go to customize, and then you can try to add this particular one. So it's a skill, we don't need skill, we are trying to add our connectors. You can see that Salesforce is not available as of now. So as I'm making this video, Salesforce beta connector is already available. If you have beta Claude, then probably you can already have the Salesforce beta direct connection. Like you can just go and click on connect, and then you can probably do your OAuth flow and authorize that particular one. But since we don't have it yet, so probably I may have to add a custom connector. So I'm just going to do add, and then I'm going to give it as SFDC Headless360, and server URL I just copied, I'm just pasting that across, and then continue. Right, so now this is where I'm talking about, right? So each user will be signing through their own auth, right? Since we have not enabled any flow auth, the web server flow automatically kicks in. I just have to provide that particular client ID or consumer secret, whichever you can call it, right? So now I'm just pasting that particular one, and then I just have to click add. Okay, so you can see that it is saying that there are no tools available. Probably it's just trying to refresh. Let's wait for a second. Okay, I think the auth flow did not kick in by itself. So there is some improvement that is happening. So let me just try to give an allow access. See, as I said, web server flow automatically kicked in, and I've been asked to allow the, like I have to give the permission, right? So now you can see that all my available tools that are there, that are present here, right? So these are the read only. As I said, like the context that it is reading, it is a read only, and these are the right destructive one that I have. So everything, it is listed down according to the way that it is user friendly and it is understanding. Now if you can relate, now you can go back to the tools, and you can see, right? So all the read onlys that are present, everything is listed at once, right? So you can see here, now everything is listed at one place, and then write or delete records, that is a destructive one, that is listed in another tool. So now this is how the MCP server would look like when you connect to your connectors, right? So now this is connected. Now the only thing that I have to do is just I have to ask the same question again. Okay, so you can see now it is asking me to give the approval so that it can actually go and fetch that, right? So now I can do always allow or always once, right? So I mean allow once, so I can give both of them. Let's give once for now, right? So it's thinking. You can even see like what are the tools that it will be having. This is a problem, that if I give always once, allow once, right? So that's why I have to give allow always, so that it can do its own job, so where I don't have to interrupt or I don't have to give any input for it. So let it do that. You can see now what are the things that it tried to do, right? Get current info, it tried to get the info of that user that has been connected. It tried to do query records, right? So you can see that that is the tool that was available, query records. You can see here, that is what it is trying to do. I can even see that, like what exactly, as I said, like query param that you have. So this is the query param that you have. I said owner, like that I own, right? That's why it tried to first fetch the current user, and then try to pass it this, right? And then there were some issues that are happening, so it is just trying to give the count, right? And then it try to got this, right? So probably maybe there is no records that are owned by me because it's a brand new account, right? So let's try to just do give me the list of accounts in Salesforce. So let's just ask that. If you see before and after response, before it was not trying to understand what is account, right? Now without me saying Salesforce, in the previous prompt it was trying to understand, okay, the person is asking actually is in the Salesforce because of the context that we gave in our tooling, right, from the MCP server that is coming, and that is how it is coming. Now you can see that these are the details that are already fetched, right? Now let's say I would need address also. Let's try to add address column as well. So let's try to get address also, right? Probably I'm doing some sales work, I would need account and the address details also. Let's see if it gives it, right? You can see now you got the address information also along with it. So now you don't have to actually go to Salesforce to do some any kind of checking, right? Imagine that you have connected your Gmail or Outlook account, you have connected your Salesforce where you are pulling the information, where you are trying to analyze. Once you have analyzed, you can shoot an email, you can ask Claude to shoot an email, or any that matter, like any client that matter, where you can actually ask them any GPT that matter, like where you can actually ask that to shoot an email. But if you would have been in the Salesforce, probably you may had to do your research and then come to Gmail or Outlook, try to do one by one. So that is the advantage that we are seeing over connecting your Salesforce and other prompts, right? So probably like you may have to connect your Google document, some analysis is there on like how formulating we have to do. All those things can be done easily once you have the context at one place. So that is the advantage of having this, and that is where the MCP servers are coming, right? As I said, in the backend the API call is still happening and we are still improving this particular one. We will talk more on in the next episode, where we will be trying to do hands-on on building our own named query and see how exactly we can do that, right? So now as you can see in this particular query, I had to explicitly ask for address, but what if I had set of fields that are expected to be resulted always, right? So then probably named query would be the way to go forward, where we would be having a set of template query which will be done, and then based on that particular one you can always find the result in the similar fashion. There's no deviation on the results or the response that Claude is trying to give. So let me meet you in that next episode where we will be trying to do hands-on. I hope you liked it. Happy learning. Thanks for your time.